a couple of minutes after noon, so we'll go ahead and kick it off. Thank you everyone for coming. We're so excited for the first of our Governmental Affairs Committee meetings in 2021. I'm Elizabeth Paul and I serve as Manager of Public Policy for the Birmingham Business Alliance. I'm so excited to be back with all of you today after being out on leave. My son Joseph is 5 months today, which is hard to believe, time flies, but I'm so happy to be back with everybody. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we get started. This meeting will be recorded and will be available on the BBA's website. And if you have any questions for our guest speakers, please use the chat function to send in your questions and we'll have a moderated Q&A at the end. I'd like to thank everyone who worked so hard on the BBA's 2021 state and federal legislative agendas, our Governmental Affairs Committee members, our Public Policy Committee members, and our legislative consultant, Daryl Perkins. We have 4 areas that we're focusing on for 2021. Policies that impact research and innovation, economic growth, infrastructure, and workforce development. As we approach the state legislative session, our top priority is ensuring the renewal and passage of economic development incentives, both the Alabama Jobs Act and the Growing Alabama Credit. These are proven incentives that we've got to move forward that allow our economic developers to do their job, which is grow jobs in the region. The Alabama Historic Preservation Tax Credit is another priority, and this credit is set to expire in 2022. It currently provides jobs, increases the tax base, and revitalizes our historic buildings and infrastructure. We've been working with partners to build a coalition to help ensure its reauthorization prior to its expiration. We also plan to support legislation to provide civil immunity protections for businesses that are operating during the pandemic. We want to make sure that essential businesses are protected from damages that are brought by individuals who claim that they contracted COVID as either an employee or customer, with certain exceptions, of course, in case an entity was acting recklessly. We'll also be working to support the passage of a research and development tax credit. We want to make sure that the Birmingham community continues to thrive and grow as a technology hub, and this legislation will help us attract new industry in R&D, and it'll put us on an even playing field with other states. We also want to make sure that any legislation that's passed will not have a negative impact on our economic development efforts and our ability to recruit jobs and talent to the region. We'll hear from our guest speakers today about these issues and more as we quickly approach the session. And as always, please reach out to me if you have any questions. My email address is epaul@birminghambusinessalliance.com. And as a reminder, we have our new Governmental Affairs Committee email inbox, which is gac@birminghambusinessalliance.com. We also have a special guest with us today who I'd like to welcome. The BBA's new president and CEO, Ron Kitchens, is with us. Ron's official start date is February 1st, but he's already hit the ground running. Ron's joining us from Michigan, where he served as senior partner and CEO of Southwest Michigan First, which is an economic development consulting corporation. He's been there since 2005 and has had over 30 years in economic development, serving in leadership roles in Texas and Missouri. He's a former city councilman for the city of Ozark, Missouri. And an interesting fact about Ron, he's the author of 2 books, Uniquely You, Transform Your Organization by Becoming the Leader Only You Can Be, and Community Capitalism, Lessons from Kalamazoo and Beyond. And you can find both on Amazon, which is pretty cool. We're so excited to have Ron on board, and I hope all of you are able to spend some time getting to know him over the coming months and welcoming him to Birmingham. So Ron, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you to say hello.
Thanks. Hey, glad to see everybody, even if it is virtual. I'm excited to be there. We put things in perspective. We have a snowstorm coming in. I'm looking out the window now. We'll get about 4 inches of snow tonight. So it'll be nice to move after they get the driveway plowed. So Lynn and I, my wife, will be heading down on Thursday or Friday, depending on the weather, and look forward to starting full time on the 1st. So it can't come soon enough. So I'll turn it back over and look forward to meeting each of you individually once we move past this craziness.
Thank you, Ron. We're so excited to have you with us. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize Kelvin Datcher with the City of Birmingham. I hope Kelvin's on. Kelvin served as chair of our Governmental Affairs Committee last year, and he stuck with us as we went virtual and navigated the pandemic and learned the Zoom world, and he didn't miss a single meeting. He was so dedicated, juggling chairing the meetings while also helping his kids navigate virtual school from home, which as a new parent myself, I can only imagine how difficult that was. Kelvin, we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. And we're very much going to miss working with you in this capacity.
Thanks so much, and congratulations on that beautiful baby.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So now I'd like to recognize our chair and vice chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee for 2021. Mary Pat Lawrence will serve as the chair this year, and Mary Pat is the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs at Protective Life Corporation. And serving as our vice chair for the year will be Ted Haas. Ted is Vice President of Government Relations at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama. So Ted will serve as chair of the committee in 2022. Thank you both so much for your leadership and partnership. We look forward to working with you, and we appreciate your time with us. So today, Mary Pat will be chairing our meeting. In her role at Protective, Mary Pat oversees the development and implementation of the public affairs agenda at the state, federal, and international levels. Prior to joining Protective, Mary Pat was the head of federal affairs and assistant general counsel for Allstate Insurance. She also served as a principal at Denton's, where she co-managed the advocacy team. She worked on Capitol Hill as a staffer to both Senator Jeff Sessions and Senator Richard Shelby. She spent 20 years in DC on both the Hill and as a consultant, managing legislative strategies for clients before transitioning to her current role at Protective. Mary Pat's a graduate of the University of Alabama, as well as the University of Alabama School of Law. Thank you, Mary Pat, for your work with the committee. We're so glad to have you here, and now I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. The sooner we can get off my glamour shot here, the better. We need one of these for Ted Haas too, but
Next year, for sure.
yes, definitely. Well, thanks so much, and it's good to see everybody. As Elizabeth said, I'm Mary Pat with Protective Life. Just like to welcome everybody to the first Government Affairs meeting of 2021. I'm very excited to be your chairman this year. Although, as I told Daryl, my only hesitation in taking this over is that I wouldn't be able to make fun of him as effectively as Kelvin did last year. So, Kelvin, if you're out there, you need to call me and give me some tips on how to make fun of Daryl. But we're very fortunate to have two great senators here with us today, Senator Rodger Smitherman and Senator Jabo Waggoner. I know we want to hear from them about the upcoming legislative session, so I'll keep this very short. But both Senators Smitherman and Waggoner have very long and distinguished careers. They're both very involved in the community and have held many leadership positions during their time in office. Senator Waggoner obviously chairing the Rules Committee, and Senator Smitherman being ranking member on several important committees. They're known to work very well together and want the best outcomes for the areas they represent. As Daryl told me last week, they work together on legislation that's helpful to Jefferson County, and they work together against legislation that's harmful to Jefferson County. So we're very lucky to have these influential members representing us in Montgomery. We appreciate both your efforts, and we look forward to hearing from you about what you expect in the upcoming legislative session that starts next week. So with that, I will turn it over to you. I think we're going to start with Senator Smitherman and then turn it over to Senator Waggoner. And after that, I'm going to take some questions from the audience. So Senator Smitherman, if you're ready, over to you.
I'll do that, but I would, if my colleague is on, I would defer to him just because he's 2 years to my seniority in the Senate. So I'm gonna, if he's on, I'll defer to him and then I'll follow after him.
Okay, great. Senator Waggoner, I saw you, but you're not on my screen anymore. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Are we ready?
We are ready.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Let me welcome Ron, who will be moving to Birmingham before long. And of course, we look forward to working with him. And in the introduction, you talked about how great Rodger Smitherman and I work together. We do. There's kind of a vicious rumor in Montgomery, if Waggoner and Smitherman are on the same size, it's going to happen. And most of the time it does. So in my allotted time, let me briefly go over some of the issues that we will take up. Prior to that, this session is going to be different than any session in times past. The leadership in the Senate and House have had to come up with certain protocols that will allow the safety of the general public, the lobbyists, and the members of the House and Senate and their staff. There will be certain protocols that will be in place for this session, which begins February the 2nd. In order to come into the building, you will be tested. In order to come up to the Senate, you need, and this is for the safety of everybody. This is not about senators and House members. In order to provide some health safety standards, we're going to have appointments to come up to the Senate floor on the 7th. The first, second, and third floor of the House, State House, will be used to meet with House members. Their offices are very small, so they'll be using the first, second, and third floor, but you can come up to the Senate floor to meet with your senator. It's not going to be fun, but it's going to be necessary for the safety of everybody involved. As all of you know, or most of you know, our session last year was limited to 21 days out of the 30 legislative days because of health issues. We did pass the education budget, $7.2 billion, the general fund budget, $2.4 billion. So we were able to fund state government for the fiscal year. Elizabeth, in her comments, mentioned some of the bills that will be our priorities. We will prioritize business legislation. There's a series of tax incentive programs that are due to expire. The Alabama Jobs Act, which provides tax credits and rebates to new industries, and the Growing Alabama Act, which provides tax credits for donations to Alabama economic development organizations. They will be a priority. The historic tax credit has always been a priority of mine. It's meant so much to development, primarily in Birmingham, to bring back to life certain buildings that are aged in Birmingham. I sponsored that legislation and will again this year. So Elizabeth hit on some of our priorities. We will extend liability protections to government, business, and churches from frivolous lawsuits that would come as a result of the coronavirus. So that will be another priority. Legislation will be introduced that prevents state taxes on federal stimulus checks. That will be another priority. As all of you know, we're under a federal court order to upgrade our prison system. We have a very overcrowded prison system, over 25,000 inmates, and we're under a federal court order to upgrade our prison system. You know, I'd like to go into detail about a lot of these, but maybe in the question and answer period, it will cause some questions. We're going to make priority the expansion of broadband in the state. As all of you know, it's hard to bring business and industries to a state, especially rural part, where you can't have high-speed internet. I feel like I'm talking very fast, but I have a lot to say in a very limited number of time. One of the most controversial bills will be the expansion of gambling in Alabama. And we're not sure whether we're going to just lotteries, or we're talking about casinos, or we're talking about sports betting, but that will be introduced at some level. As all of you know, we're surrounded in Alabama with states that have gambling, and a lot of people in Alabama go to Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, or Florida to place their bets. So the governor had a committee that studied gambling in the surrounding states, studied the potential for gambling and the revenue that we have the possibility of gaining with some level of gambling. And I think the report came out that we could increase our revenue either to the education budget or the general fund budget from $300 to $700 million a year. It's a substantial increase in our budget opportunities. So you will see gambling legislation introduced at some level. It could be just lottery, but it could be wide open. Okay, so that's the potential we have. Medical cannabis will be back. It will be reintroduced. So as I recall, Senator Smitherman, it did pass the Senate last year, but failed in the House. One issue that's very, very close to Senator Smitherman and I think it's a done deal, but we went to the wall along with Senator Greg Reed on a $50 million appropriation to UAB Genomics Center. As most of you know, the study of genetics is the future of medicine in this country and in this world, probably. That is huge for Birmingham. It's huge for Alabama. And Rodger and I lived with the governor and his staff and her staff trying to get our $50 million appropriation in the bond issue, which we did. So there's going to be a lot more read about it, heard about it, but that is huge for our community. UAB is on the course to be one of the world leaders in the field of genomics. One thing that's been very close to me, 2 years ago, I offered a resolution in the Senate to create a Alabama Commission on Artificial Intelligence. We met, I was vice chair along with Greg Canfield, and we met maybe 10 or 12 times before the virus came to town. So we have healthcare, we had higher education, we had the business community, we had elementary and secondary represented on the study committee, and we were making real advancements on where is Alabama going to be in the field of artificial intelligence. I'm going to introduce a bill this session to create a permanent committee on artificial intelligence because Alabama needs not to be left behind in the field of artificial intelligence. And this permanent study committee is going to make sure that we are not. That's been a priority of mine, and it will continue to be because Alabama cannot be left behind in the growing technology field. So that is a priority of mine. Senator Smitherman continually helped me on my issues like I helped him on his issues. And those are some of the highlights of this session. It's going to be different because of the virus, the access to the State House. And I may have stated a while ago, it cut our session short last year. We met 21 days out of 30 days And it's going to be different this session, but that's the world we're living in right now, and we have to deal with it. But hopefully we can stay in session the complete 30 legislative days within a calendar period of 105 days. So Senator Smitherman, I'm going to turn it over to you. That's some of the highlights, and then you and I can field any of the questions that our listeners have in a few minutes.
All right. Well, Senator, I just tell each and every person that I just ditto everything that, first of all, that he just said. Those he was very accurate with some of the things that we're going to have to address and that we're looking at, and we want to continue. You know, we've got to continue to do what we can do to help businesses so that we can maintain at the level we are and increase as we go through this crisis that we're going through now. You know, so on the state level, I think that we will continue to do whatever it is that we need to do in regard to these bills, because we've seen them work. We've seen them work. As he said, the historical tax credit, I mean, I can go down 2-3 blocks to my lawn and show you where it's working. So I know that all those incentives and all those credits that we have there are working. I do want to say this also, though, is that one of the things that we you know, it's kind of like it's two sides of it. Those things are our priorities, but we have some things that dealing with some human issues that we are going to address. I mean, we're in the process of addressing it now, so let me say that first. But one of the things that I just want to share this with everybody is that, you know, we had some problems as it relates to those monuments, and we had some problems as it relates, you know, to those kind of issues, use of force and those things. The reason that, and I want to share this with everyone, the reason that you see the calmness now in part is because many of those young people have come and talked to some of us, and we've kind of told them, we said, look, a lot of this deals with the legislative matters and things that has to be done on that level. And so let us meet and give us an opportunity to come together so that we can help resolve some of those concerns. And so that's what you see them doing. They're kind of sitting and getting ready to look. They've been waiting because we're not in session, but they're sitting and looking. And those are some things that we've been meeting. We've been meeting with APOS on some things. We've been meeting with the governor's office on some things. So, and Leah, you know, so I just want y'all to know that it's not just something I mentioned, it's something in the process that everybody's trying to work to get done. But things dealing with background checks, things dealing with the use of force, and just simply because we don't have statewide statutes. We got 400-something municipalities, and we got probably 400-something different procedures how to deal with it. And so we're trying to get some uniformity in that, as well as get some training and those kind of things in the process as well, checking background. So I think that that's a side of it that you probably, you know, will kind of see moving, but it has a big impact, you know, on our attention, you know, as we move forward through this situation. The other thing what the senator saying about the pandemic is that it's going to get to a point when it's kind of like a relay race. And I mean, I don't know what we're going to do, but it's kind of like a relay race. When you get to a certain point with the baton, you have to pass it off. I thought the federal government was going to pass the baton off in December of this year, which I'm glad they didn't. But at whatever point that they pass it off, we've kind of got to put ourselves in a position to not let people just fall 100% on their face. So the state is going to have to look at some things. I don't know what at this time, but I do know that we're going to have to look at whatever things that we can do to try to assist people through this crisis, which they have now. One of the things that probably many people, and I bet not many people at all on this Zoom has thought about, but one of the biggest for the future of this whole state is going to be the literacy bill. And the literacy bill, we passed a bill that said that after 3 years, if a person could not read at a certain level, that they were going to have to be held back. Well, I think anybody that's in education can understand that it's no way that you can take a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, or a 7-year-old and teach them how to read by Zoom. You just don't, it's not going to happen. It's not to the level that they're talking about. So that's something that we'll be looking at, hopefully delaying the implementation of the time frame of it to deal with this situation that we're dealing with now. That's critical because that's going to have ramifications if we do not continue in our school system and backing up, and it's just going to cause some havoc for us. So those are some things that we have to look at. Also, of course, as always, we have to look at basic things, Medicaid, what kind of services we're going to provide people, health. We got a lot of people needing some help now because even with the COVID-19, you got to treat the symptoms. It's not just, and that's what something a lot of people don't, I guess, talk about, the fact that it's not that you're just going to the doctor dealing with the COVID-19. You deal with the symptoms as well. So if you got pneumonia, you got to treat pneumonia. It's separate from treating the COVID-19 itself. So a lot of those things that people are going to need with Medicaid and Medicare, that we've got to be able to do those things as well. The last thing I heard you said something about the incentives, about the research. Senator Waggoner and I have been staunch supporters of Southern Research Institute, and I hope that they get the opportunity to participate, just as Alfred Hudson has been able to do up in Huntsville. So that's going to be a concern of mine in particular, and Senator Waggoner in particular, about that as well. So those are just some of the general things. We have a few other things that we could bring up and talk about, but those are just some of the major things. And the reason I mention it, because as we move forward with the things that he talked about here, is that in this process, we got the budgets, we got these things, and we got these things that we're talking about. So we're going to try to find a way to move those things through. We do have reapportionment, but I think that Senator Waggoner can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's going to probably come in a special session where we will address that as well. So with that in mind, we look forward to doing whatever we can to try to keep our businesses going. And he said it absolutely right. We will work hand in hand in trying to get things done for all our citizens here and in the state. So it's just, we ready to roll.
Well, that's great. Thank you both for those comments. And I think we'll switch over to questions now. I don't see any in the chat function. Does anyone want to jump in and ask a question?
So somebody do them like Senator Waggoner. I greet our new president, but he can keep that snow up there. So don't bring that down here to Alabama.
Well, maybe I'll kick it off with one question that's probably on everybody's mind, and that just has to do with the vaccine and the distribution of the vaccine. I know it's been reported that Alabama received a shorter supply than we were anticipating. And I'm wondering, Senator Waggoner, Senator Smitherman, what are you guys hearing about that? Are you hearing from your constituents? Are you talking to the governor's office? What are you all hearing on the distribution of the vaccine?
Of course, we're hearing from constituents, but we're also hearing from the state health officer and the governor's office. They're justifying, the state health officer, the distribution. I think they've contracted with Walgreens maybe, or is it Walmart, that they're going to distribute some of the vaccines through pharmacies. But I'm hearing two sides. I'm hearing from people out in the community that they can't get their vaccine and they're 75 years old or 70 years old. When can they get it? My phone's ringing like Rodger's is.
Mm-hmm.
But I talked to the state health officer, and he says he does not know how we can distribute it any faster based on our allotment. So Rodger may want to jump in and tell me what he's hearing. I'm hearing
basically the same thing. In fact, I heard just as early as this morning, I got a call from a senior living center where I guarantee you everybody in it is 75 or older. And they're saying, why can't they just come here to this center? There's about 50, 60, 70 people there. Senior, and they could get all of them right there. They said, why they can't come here and do that? And I think in part is what Senator Waggoner said, is that the supply. You know, I think they kind of, I've heard from the side that's implementing it that they want something to have something to work with when they start cranking it up. You know, they feel that just there's not enough, don't have enough doses to go through that process. But I would hope that we would stay vigilantly on trying to get those vaccines, and especially I'm hopeful. I think it's Johnson and Johnson that's supposed to come out, the third group. I'm optimistic when they come out that maybe that will enhance our supplies, and I think that the new move that's been made in Washington, I think to get the National Guard involved in terms of getting it out to people in the areas, I think it's going to help. But Senator Wagner is right. You know, right now, we got a lot of people that are concerned because they qualify for it, they want to get it, and they haven't been provided the opportunity to be able to do that.
Great, thank you. And I've heard the same about the National Guard. I think that's been very effective in other states. So hopefully Alabama can replicate it. Thanks for those comments. And we do have a question about auto plants. The question is that Alabama will soon be home to 4 auto plants, and we'd love to see us one day secure the R&D facility for at least one of these. Any insight on that question? Dealing with auto plants and R&D facilities?
Well, I think that R&D tax credit is part of R&D facility. They paired together.
Well, as I stated earlier in my comments, we're going to pass a series of tax incentive programs. And if one of those will help us secure a plant like that, we need to do it. That will be one of our priorities early in the session of these. There's some of our incentives that are expiring, and we've got to pass those tax incentive programs to extend them.
I agree. We do, and it's the way it's just the way it is. If you want to get these businesses, you got to put an infrastructure of help for them there and to bring them in. And then you can't just do it to bring them. You got to maintain it to keep them. So I think that Senator Wagner hit the nail right on the head.
Great. Well, I've got one related to that, which is just a comment saying thanks for your support of the Northern Beltline. So I don't know if you all have any observations or comments you want to make on the Northern Beltline.
As I understand it, Senator Shelby has put in place, the money. I don't know if it's enough to complete the Northern Beltline, but I think we're fixing to see a lot of additional miles added to the Northern Beltline, thanks primarily to our man in Washington, Senator Richard Shelby.
Well, I'm like Senator Wagner. I think we have been blessed to have him up there. No matter what his role, he's got his finger on the pulse. What we need, and I'm just, as he said, I'm just thankful for what he's doing. And I do think that that's going to be an enhancement for us as that Northern Beltline moves, because this part of the state itself is going to benefit. And I'm just real thankful. I mentioned that to Mr. Cooper. I'm real thankful for the fact that they went on and took care of us up here with the interstate. What we needed. I was very thankful for that, because most people don't know, but there's a lot of areas in the state who request a lot from him. And have needs just like we did. But I'm just very appreciative of it. And that's going to put us in a prime position to take advantage of the Northern Beltline. So I think that's going to be good.
Great. Thanks to you both. Another question, going back to something you mentioned, Senator Wagner, on broadband expansion. There's a question here, if you would just elaborate on that, and will the legislature emphasize fiber optic deployments? Hopefully you know what fiber optic deployments are, because I don't.
Yes, I think we all know that no industry today will go to rural Alabama without having broadband or high-speed internet, okay? I think it's key to our industrial development efforts in this state, primarily in the rural areas, for us to expand broadband. Of course, it's going to be very expensive. One idea that I've heard of recently is that some of the gambling revenue that, if that passes, will be going to expand broadband in Alabama in the rural areas. Of course, we're talking about some huge revenue numbers depending on how far into gambling we go, but I think I used the numbers a while ago, 300 million to 700 million a year annually if we expand Alabama's gambling opportunities. Of course, at the end of the day, the people of Alabama will decide yes or no on the expansion of gambling. It's a constitutional amendment. And, whatever we do in Montgomery eventually would go to the people of Alabama to vote yes or no on gambling. But I've heard that a lot of that revenue will go to expand broadband in our state.
Yeah, I agree with Senator Sam about not Senator Sam, Senator Wagner about the broadband. I was fortunate enough to be involved in that first broadband bill that we passed. Like Senator Marsh and we were involved in it. Senator Wagner too, and it's the situation with the COVID-19 now, and with everybody like we on Zoom now. I don't think we're gonna go back to the way that we were completely. I know we'll go back when things, but you're gonna have the need for this throughout the state. Right now, we're trying to patch in with hot spots, and everybody having to go to certain spots in the rural area to get. And really, we have a few deserts here in the urban area as well. Internet deserts. So I think that it's going to be vital for us to keep up in the 21st century. And as he said, that no matter how hard we want to help the rural area with businesses, and many of them are located on near decent highways, where you have transportation. But until we get to broadband, it's going to be difficult for them to thrive. So I'm all for it. And as he said about that revenue, that's going to be another movement for us to be able to expand, having revenues to expand if we do take on the lottery issue or the gambling issue as well. I do want to say this though about that issue. I do want to say it since we're talking. I think that it's a good time. One of the things that I think is going to be vital is that the communities, whether whatever these may take place, whatever we end up doing, that they maintain the opportunity for those people to get jobs. I think that that's a critical component of it. And I said that because it's going to be vital that we deal with whoever may be the person in charge of these that has a commitment to people working. So so I think that that's going to be critical. It's kind of same way with the prisons. I think Senator Wagner will attest to that. That's been one of the stumbling blocks because people want to move them other places and the economic engines for those places, and it's not the need to improve or change, but it's the economic engines that may leave certain areas that's just causing some concern. And that's the same thing with this issue, that sensitivity is given to that. And I think it will be, but I just kind of want to bring that to you because that's some of the things that you may not even hear us talk about. But that's, you may say, well, why, it's a no-brainer. Why everybody's not on board with that issue? But when you talk about people losing jobs and you people not having the opportunity to get jobs, then that kind of desensitize you in terms of that, because that's where the rubber meets the road, with those people there in your community. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there that's some of the conversations that I've heard indirectly that concern people that, what's going to happen if you bring in outside people that don't care anything about what's here, or you bring in even, a group of people that but I committed to that. You know, what's going to happen. You know, then they started talking about the other side of it. So that's why I wanted to put that out there. That's a critical component, even among people who would vote and support it. That's a critical component right there. So.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And just circling back to broadband, we had a question come in about the legislative agenda. I know you gave some details about how it's going to go, Senator Waggoner, but the question is, will the agenda be limited to just necessary items, or will the session be open to all legislation that's introduced? And maybe it may be premature. You may have to see how things go, but just curious what the two of you are hearing on the agenda items in the upcoming session.
As we all know, we convened February the 2nd. The legislature is going to meet 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for the first 2 weeks. Then the leadership will get together and analyze how it's going. Has the pandemic spread through the State House? Are we safe? Do we feel comfortable? Is the public and the lobbying community okay with the operation of the legislature? So we're going to analyze it the 3rd week and see where we stand. I would say early in the session that the legislature will consider what we call the must-do bills. We have to have them. Some of these job incentive bills will be priorities, but we, the leadership, have prioritized certain legislation that must pass early, and I think the incentive bills will be in that category. But the longer we stay, and hopefully we can stay the full 30 legislative days, you know, normally there's about 1,000 bills introduced during a regular session. That's a ballpark figure. Sometimes it may be 1,200, sometimes it may be 800, but 1,000 bills is a round number that's generally in the ballpark. And of those, 200 to 300 general bills will pass. And you might say, well, you know, 200 out of 1,000 is not a very good batting average. We are not sent to Montgomery just to pass a whole bunch of bills. You probably wouldn't want to live in Alabama, or probably couldn't afford to live in Alabama if we passed every bill that's introduced. So some of us, and a lot of that falls on my lot as being chairman of the Rules Committee. We determine what bills go to the floor for consideration. So we try to, I hate to use the word weed out bad legislation, but really that's what we do.
I would just ditto with Senator. That's it.
What'd you say, Rodger?
I said ditto. being a member of his Rules Committee, I can say I ditto.
Looks like we had a question from, here we go. Okay, go ahead, over to you.
Both senators, just want to remind you, first, thank you for mentioning these bills that exempt federal stimulus payments and the PPP loan. Be careful, there are 4 or 5 bills bouncing around, one by the Department of Revenue, you know, Elliott. And the most comprehensive bill I've seen so far is by Dan Roberts, and I would commend that to you reading. It covers the CARES Act as well as the Consolidated Appropriations Act that passed on December 27th. So again, the most comprehensive bill covers probably 8 different things that Congress has, either loans or grants or stimulus checks, whatever. So I just encourage you to look at those bills and find the more comprehensive version and put that at the top of your list, please.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. It looks like we got time for a couple more questions. One is regarding the Jobs Act. Will the cap be raised, and if so, by how much?
Rodger, you may be able to answer that. I have not seen the details of the Jobs Act legislation, In fact, it's a little premature for us to see any of the legislation except our own. So I can't speak to that.
I'm not sure exactly myself as the senator said. I mean, I have the I have the breakdown of it, but I don't have the information of whether or not that's going to take place yet. I don't know yet.
Okay, thank you. One more here. The question is, being an employer, I'm concerned with a recent executive action allowing employees to quit their job and still maintain eligibility for unemployment compensation. Any thoughts on this executive order?
I've communicated with the very qualified guy that runs our Department of Labor more in the last 3 months than I ever have in my whole career. But as far as the detail of that question, I can't respond to it. I know they analyze every request, and I have not heard of them granting unemployment compensation to someone who just quit their employment. I would be surprised if that's true, but maybe one fell through the crack, but I would be surprised if they granted unemployment to someone who just quit their employment.
Well, I'm kind of like the senator. I don't really know enough about the inside workings of it to notice how it applies in that regard. But just as he was saying, it'd be difficult if the person no reason all just said, "Look, I'm just gone, stop working," and then it'd be kind of tough. I don't see blanketly that happening, but I haven't had the opportunity to really read the bill, to read it, the act, to analyze it or anything at this time.
Okay, one more dealing with the upcoming session, and the question is, will the Senate special order calendars be published in advance for the public to review? Do you all have any idea about that?
I would say early in the session, they will be. That's something here again, the leadership has talked about, but I think there will be a prior notice sent out of the legislation that is proposed for any specific legislative day.
I think that, of course, you talk to the right person when you talk to Senator Waggoner. Let me say that first. But I think that he kind of hit the nail right on the head. He takes us that morning. He's the one that we deal with that morning, and if we can work through it, that might be the one you see published you're talking about. But then we as a body will be on the floor and we say, look, we have a few people on there, so let's work. And so at that point, the rule committee go back, and get together on another agenda, we come work, and it's kind of hard to publish that one, so you may see that kind of situation, or you may see we have to come out with a smaller one because we see some obstacles on the one that's out, but we have to get those things passed that may be on the smaller one, so that in those situations, it may not be practical, but in other situations, I think the senator is going to provide, the notice that he can and that is needed.
Great, thank you. One more dealing with potential legislation, and the question is, will Medicaid expansion be considered in the upcoming session?
Medicaid expansion's always talked about, debated, considered, but thus far, a majority of the members of the House and Senate have opposed expanding Medicaid. As I mentioned earlier, the general fund budget is $2.4 billion. Medicaid at the present time takes, it's between $700 and $800 million annually, which is a substantial hit on our general fund budget. And as a side note, the prison system, Department of Corrections, is over $500 million. So those two agencies alone take up more than half of our general fund budget. Medicaid expansion is always mentioned. It's debated, talked about, but thus far it has not passed, and I don't see it during this controversial session. Maybe a shorter session. I don't think that will happen this session.
I think that one of the things that probably will be discussed in that regard is depending on how large a match, that you have to have, and what if it's a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 match or something like that. I can see that possibly that if we are able to pass the comprehensive gambling legislation, that we may be able to make that a part of those revenues. So I think that with the situation we're having right now, because we, as the senator said, we always talk about it, and we're going to be asking, so I said that we'll be asking, but we also know that it takes money, as well. And if we can come up with some additional revenue in that regard, there may be an opportunity to do that in some shape, form, or fashion. I don't know how, I don't know if it'd be just a matter of expansion of benefits for the people who presently there now, or whether if we could do something like that. But as he said, that will be part of the conversation, and we'll just see how it goes.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more in the chat function. Does anybody else want to ask a question? We have about 5 more minutes left in our time. If not, I just want to say thank you both for spending so much time with us and answering all these questions. I know you're both very busy, and it's going to be a busy month ahead. Good luck to both of you, and thanks for all that you do. We really appreciate it and hope to see you soon.
Well, thank you.
So-
Thank you, Pat. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here. And Senator, I'll see you in a minute. See you soon.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Thanks, senators. And Elizabeth, I think I'm turning it back over to you now, Elizabeth, for the next speaker.
All right. Thank you.
And thanks, Senator.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary Pat. Yes, we'll wrap up. Thank you to both of our speakers today for being a friend to the business community. We greatly appreciate it. Mary Pat, thank you for chairing, and thank you for your work with us this year. Our next Governmental Affairs Committee meeting is going to be on Monday, February 22nd, and I'm excited to announce that we are welcoming Cornell Wesley as our upcoming speaker. He serves as the new director of the Department of Innovation and Economic Opportunity for the City of Birmingham. So looking forward to that. And with that, that wraps us up for the day. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And this concludes our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Elizabeth.
Bye.
Bye.